Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of your Rehab Power Hour. This is your community to engage in virtual rehab together and a place to discuss all things neuro-rehab, from the science, the people behind it, and the individual journeys of recovery. I'm your host, as always, Dr. Nick Housley, and joining with me today is David. Welcome, David.
Hi, everyone. This is David Wu. I'm the founder and CEO of Motus Nova and looking forward to chatting with everyone.
Great, and as always, we welcome anyone recovering from a neurologic injury, their friends, family members, or care partners, as well as their clinicians to engage in this conversation with us today and every Rehab Power Hour. So great to have you here. We have our first double header today, so it's got back-to-back one. So we've got extra time to kind of go into some of the weeds and really help you guys get your hand mentors and foot mentors up and running. So we have a couple of great guests here today, and we'll get started with them momentarily. But before we get started on them, I want to quickly go through a couple of announcements. As always, there's a couple of ways you can get in touch with us here. You can reach out to us via the chat, and you can send us questions or comments. Let us know what you're thinking, or send us some cool ideas. We're happy to discuss those on our session today. We also have an email address you can reach out to us at rehabpowerhour@motusnova.com. You can send us an email anytime, send us a question, comment, maybe a game idea, or something that's bugging you. We're happy to help and listen to those comments and try to give you feedback. You can also send me a voicemail at 404-594-4244. You can send that during the Rehab Power Hour. You can also send that at a later time. If you're up in 3 o'clock in the morning and really thinking about neuro rehab and wanting to ask me a question, give me a voicemail or I guess give me a call and leave a voicemail. We'll be able to play it on the next Rehab Power Hour and we can get your question answered for you. And as always, if you find this helpful, what we're doing here today, you like what we're doing, feel free to like this and share it with any of your friends. We also have the support group for you guys. So we're putting up more content there and answering questions. David and myself are active there answering your questions and trying to interact. And so if you guys think that that's a really helpful community, do share it with your friends. We'd love to have anyone who is a hand mentor user, foot mentor user, or not. If they're just interested in general neuro rehab, we'd love to have them there. So looking forward to working with you guys and talking with you on the stroke support group. Okay, also as a couple of quick things, we also have the live sessions. I want to quickly remind you guys on the consoles. So if you have your hand mentor or foot mentor console, you can power that on. In the top right-hand side of that screen, you'll see a join live session button, and you can click on that, and you can use this opportunity to get normally an hour of additional rehab, but today you can get 2 hours of rehab. You can work with us. And if you don't have a hand mentor or foot mentor, no problem. You can get your home exercise program out and start doing those exercises, and we will keep you company while you do them. Will be kind of the motivation. All of us here in the live stream will be the motivation for you to keep getting those hours and those repetitions in. Also, a couple of congratulations are due. We've had a number of individuals complete their 30-hour challenge in the last couple of days, actually. So I want to quickly give some recognition to those individuals. There's a little bit of a list here, guys, so bear with me here. I want to congratulate Heidi H. in Utah, Robert A. in Texas, Tay B. in North Carolina, Kashan in California, Emily H. in New York, and Ken in New Jersey. So congratulations to the 6 of you for completing those 30-hour challenges. It's a big milestone, and look out in the mail for a couple of cool prizes that are coming your way. I think we actually have hopefully we can have maybe some pictures. If you guys have gotten your 30-hour challenge, maybe take a selfie and let us know in the live stream what it looks like, what you think of it, and maybe give us some ideas about the next set of prizes that we can give out. Maybe they're like little goniometers, or maybe they're some cool little maybe medals. Looking forward to seeing what you guys think about that. And for those of you who are not familiar with the 30-hour challenge, this is our representation, sort of our understanding, recognition rather, of the importance of the amount of rehab that you're getting. And so if you're able to get to 30 hours of active rehab with your hand mentor or foot mentor in that first month as a new subscriber, you'll be eligible for those nice prizes. And of course, we'll shout your name from the rooftop here in Rehab Power Hour, and we'll send you all the congratulations and keep motivating you. We also have a couple individuals who are approaching, if not past, the 100-hour or multiple 100 hours of challenges. And so we'll have to come up with some really cool prizes for that too, because those are huge accomplishments as well. So very good. I think that's the kind of end of my announcements. Dave, did I mention, or did I miss anything rather?
No, that was. I think you covered most of it. I just want to
Excellent.
reiterate how important that getting those hours and repetitions are. We talked on Monday with Dr. Steve Wolf
Mhm.
about one of these seminal papers in neuro-rehab that really examined what really happens to the brain. How does the brain, what looks like a brain that's rewiring after doing all these repetitions and all these hours of rehab. And we'll be continuing that Science Corner series next
Mhm.
Monday, talking about we talked about hours. We talked about how the brain rewires. I think next we're going to talk about repetitions and how that folds into this concept of rewiring neuro rehab. So
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
And I
I
think
want to
just
say hi.
quickly,
Oh, please.
one,
Okay.
yeah, one thing, Dave. Just on that, guys. Something that you guys can look forward to is there'll be kind of a revealing of what is actually done in real clinical practice, which will be maybe, hopefully, we think it's going to be a surprising element. So you guys do tune in on Monday to hear about what's happening in your general OT/PT clinics. It's a rather
Yep.
stark thing. So
Yep.
we're excited to talk about that.
Maybe a little bit of a teaser. How many repetitions are you really getting in outpatient rehab, in the hour of
Yeah.
outpatient rehab? I think in the last study we talked about these trials where they were doing 400 to 600 repetitions, something like that, per day, with some of these primates, and looking at
Yeah.
scanning their brains and seeing the rewiring happening. So
Mhm.
relative to that 400, 600 repetitions a day, how many do you think you're actually getting in those outpatient rehab sessions? And then how many repetitions do you think you're getting with an hour of on the hand mentor or foot mentor? So these are just kind of teaser questions that we'll look forward to answering on Monday. So a couple of
Actually,
shout outs here.
let's go ahead
Okay.
and
Okay.
guys, let's go ahead and let us know if you want to take a stab at this. If you want to kind of give a shot in the dark,
In the
let us know
comments.
what you think
Yeah.
in the comments. Let me know. Is it how many repetitions are you getting in a general hour of rehab? We'll kind of take an informal poll, and then we'll talk about that on Monday when we
Yeah.
reveal the real answer from
And
the
and
scientific
and
papers.
yeah, and of course, not all repetitions are created equal. There are some better repetitions than others, but we're getting ahead of
Mhm.
ourselves. We'll get to all of that on the Science Corner on Monday. So absolutely looking forward to that. I want to say hi to Mark for joining us today. Hi, Mark Van Dusen. Hi, Jerry. Always great to see Jerry. One of our regulars. Hello, Rhonda, Stacy, Dawn from Phoenix. Hello, Dawn. And all everyone else, please give a shout out in the comments. Hello, Ruthie from Israel. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. Hello, Carmen from Utah, as well as everyone else that's joining us on Rehab Power Hour. Come say hi and tell us how many hours of rehab you've gotten this week. That's something that we hope to everyone can be proud of. We're all here to get better in our stroke recovery, in our rehab journey, with our brain injuries, and say hi, tell us where you're from, and how many hours you've done this week. And the last thing, I've got one more announcement here. We have a contest that's going. So this is a contest on our page. And we'll of course post more details both on the support group and in this video as well, with some of the rules. But essentially, we're looking to have see videos of you using your hand mentor, your Motus hand, or your Motus foot, and either that or maybe completing a functional task, lifting a cup, tying your shoes, something that you recently were able to do, and something that you're proud of. So send us that video, or post it as well in the Facebook group. It's often can be really inspiring for everyone to see. And thank you, Parth, for putting that up there. So that's the contest. Send it to us by the end of the month, by the end of March 31st, and we're then for everyone that sent one in, we're going to draw a lucky winner, and the winner will get a free month of the a free month of either on the Motus hand or the Motus foot. So certainly something exciting to do, as well as just kind of also being proud of your gains and the rehab you're doing, and also inspiring other stroke survivors that they can do it too. So something that we're hoping will add and give back to the community. So a little bit of announcement there. We'll of course give more details as well, and email us, email Ella at ella.sophia@motusnoah.com, or Facebook message us for more details. But that's all the announcements that I had, Dr. Nick.
Excellent. Okay, so I guess we can probably go
Oh,
and get
and
started.
sorry, one last
Okay.
thing. I almost forgot. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. Yeah.
There we go.
It's St. Patty's Day. We're not wearing our green, but we're celebrating in spirit with everybody. Yeah. Joe's got his shirt on. Yeah. Joe's got. We'll get there, Joe. No, back to you, Dr. Dick.
Okay, very good, Des. I think we're actually going to go ahead and get started with one of our spotlight users. I think we have Iffy in the studio. Is that correct? See if we can get Iffy's audio up and running. Go.
Iffy, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, just fine.
Okay.
So if you wouldn't mind maybe starting by just maybe stating your name, where you're calling from, and when you had your neurologic injury.
Okay. Okay. One, I don't have the specific injury myself.
Sure.
This is on behalf of my mom. Okay.
Sure.
And so we're working through a couple of things as far as the hand.
Yeah. Hand mentor. Yep.
The hand mentor. So I guess I'm just listening to you folks just to see. I guess a few people are way ahead of the curve as far as that.
Sure. Well, when did your mom have her stroke?
This is about 6 years ago.
6 years ago. Okay. And where are you guys calling from?
We're calling from Ardmore, PA, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Gotcha. All right.
Fantastic.
Well, so I think maybe if you guys, do you have any specific questions? I know oftentimes it can be very helpful to go through an assessment, but it would be kind of good to see if you have any sort of outstanding questions before I maybe ask you some questions.
I guess just general operations of the equipment in and of itself. So I guess that's a good start point. I don't know if I should have watched.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I can kind of give a highlight here too. I think one thing that would be good is, can you give me a sense of how long you've had the hand mentor so far?
We've only had it for about a week.
A week, okay. Well, maybe what we can do is walk through just a high-level overview of the components and maybe how it's supposed to be used and kind of how it's intended to be used.
Right.
So Dr. Nick, yeah, right before we do that, just out of curiosity, if you can talk about maybe a little bit about your mom's stroke. Does she have? I'm assuming it's one-sided. Is it her left side or right side that's affected?
Right side.
Her right side. Okay. So stroke on the left side of the brain. Her right side is affected. Now, is it both the hand, the upper extremity, and the foot, or some combination?
Yeah, just everything on the right side.
Everything on the right side. Okay. And I think we're going to try to work on the hand here in a little bit. So that'll be great. Can you give us an idea of what her abilities are, what her movements are, kind of before using the hand mentor? Because it's always great for us to kind of get an understanding of where people were and then how people kind of make their progress.
Full capacity, yeah. She's medically trained MD PhD researcher. So
wow, fantastic.
So it was full capacity before that.
Wow.
So
yeah. So she was a physician,
yes.
and a medical researcher as well, with the doctorate degree, with a PhD. And really sorry to stroke can affect anybody.
Yes.
And we have this reminds me of Dr. Dan, another one of our users. Dr. Dan was a orthopedic surgeon, and he was in his late 40s as well before getting a stroke. And he's still working at getting back to full capacity, and been using the hand mentor. And I think we've got some of his testimonials as well, or a video of him talking about his experience with the hand mentor on our website. I'd be happy to share that with everyone as well. But really sorry to hear. Of course, stroke can affect everybody, even those in the medical community. And our hearts go out to everyone that has a stroke, and especially those that are on the treatment side as well. So very sorry to hear that. So she was full capacity before the stroke. After the stroke, can you give us an idea of how her hand, how her right hands are in terms of being able to move, kind of volitional movement, those kinds of things?
I want to say very, very, if not to minimal, not as well. The deficits are clearly there.
Yeah.
As far as
so maybe a way to talk about this is, can she voluntarily move her hand?
No.
Okay. How about her elbow? Can she extend or bend her elbow?
Nothing on the on the right side.
Okay, very good. And that includes the shoulder too, right?
That includes the shoulder as well.
Okay. Is there any resistance to movement if you start to maybe move her around? Okay, so there's no tone, as they would say.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
And we get this question a lot, Dr. Nick, and maybe it can benefit us and maybe everyone here listening. How is the hand mentor appropriate for? Is the Motus hand appropriate for someone that has, in Iffy's case, little or no movement in her right hand?
Yeah, we've talked about this several times on the Rehab Power Hour, and it is an important topic to mention. I think the truth of the matter is it's really going to be very hard to know for certain whether or not the hand mentor is going to work for any individual person, right? Unfortunately, science doesn't work like that. It tells us in generalities, and so we know that on average, we expect to see these sorts of improvements if we do X amount of active rehab, number of movements, and these sorts of things. And it has shown over a number of clinical trials to be beneficial in terms of improving function. In a lot of these individuals who have maybe lower capacity to move, either minimal or no active ability to move the upper extremity, we generally see maybe less improvement. So there is some association, some relationship with the magnitude of improvements with the sort of starting point. And that's just kind of expected. That's just true for any kind of rehab intervention. But there are certainly cases in people using it right now who have been on Rehab Power Hour before that have been in similar situations where they've had very little to no movement, and we're starting to get trace contractions back. And so starting to get some volitional control back. And so that's on the functional side. And then, of course, on the actual tissue health side, where there's, of course, significant benefits that can be had by nature of engaging in an active rehab program. Such as reducing or eliminating the possibility of having those contractures come up, which could happen even if you don't have any tone, right? Just because of positional issues, you can develop these contractures, which can cause a bunch of downstream problems. And then by nature of having access to a intervention that gives you biofeedback, so that's really intense sensory priming can help with recovery of those motor networks. So there's a lot of benefits for even people with little to no active movement. And it goes without saying that you don't have to have any active movement to start using a hand mentor, right? That's just a period, right? There's a reason why it has the assistance built in, and the ability to detect your movements, and even to be able to detect very small movements with those very fine sensors. So you don't have to have any volitional movement to engage in it, but we just have to be careful about what our expectations are with the functional outcomes.
Yeah, and it's so important to talk about how, like you said, Dr. Nick, science deals with groups, with populations, right? Whether it's a drug or a treatment of some kind, we look at if it helps groups of people or large numbers of people. But science doesn't really talk about any specific individual. And in those cases, oftentimes it's up to us to say, to be responsible and say, every case can be different. And especially with the brain, as we talked about earlier in the week, there's so much more for us to know, so little that we really do fully understand about the brain, that sometimes, we know these processes work, but we don't really understand a lot of underlying mechanisms. So it's sometimes difficult to make predictions. But of course, as you said, we have users that have no movements, that started with no movements on the hand mentor, and then after doing a lot of hours and a lot of repetitions of rehab, were able to get some movements back and really begin to start moving, and hopefully going forward can build upon that and get some kind of meaningful function or meaningful movement back down the line. So absolutely, I think a great point to address here. And as we kind of move into this, Dr. Nick, I know a question that we had from Stacy. By the way, hello, Stacy. thank you for joining us. And I think we have Heather here in the stream as well. Always great to see you, Heather. Heather's one of our power users. So is Don, I believe. I believe Don and Heather recently hit 200 hours, if I'm not mistaken. And so thank you for joining us. We have a question from Stacy as well, and maybe that kind of goes into what we're about to do here. Does the hand mentor establish a baseline when you start using it? We talk about comparisons, we talk about science, we talk about before and after. Baselines are so important. Is that something the hand mentor is establishing? And is that what we're going to do here today?
Yeah, this whole part of establishing baseline and is exceptionally important, right? We have to know where we start, not only to know progress over time. That way, it informs you guys as the end users what is kind of expected, what kind of magnitude of improvement you're seeing. But it's important for also how the rehab is tailored, right? It needs to be appropriately tuned for you. And without doing appropriate baseline measures, right? Figuring out how much you can move, how much assistance you need, what types of games are appropriate for you. Without those baseline conditions, or even your capacity to do X amount of hours of rehab at any given period of time. Without those measures, we could be set up for some difficulty later on because we would maybe set the ranges of motion too small, in which case you're kind of cheating yourself. Or alternatively, we could set those ranges too large and you wouldn't be able to complete the tasks. So there has to be appropriate baseline measures taken so that all the features of the hand mentor can be tuned for you. So yeah, it's of the utmost importance. And I'll say this, that it doesn't stop at baseline. All right, because the hand mentor has these digital sensors that are present, sensing not only your movements, but your strength and your endurance and these sorts of things, sort of these primary measures and these derived measures, we are constantly evaluating those characteristics of your performance. And then it's like a baseline measurement, but every second there's like a new baseline, right? We're getting new data every time to update the way the hand mentor is responding to you. So it's not just a baseline. So that's of course very good. That's kind of like setting the I guess the direction of travel and how fast you need to move. But then we also can change that path and change the speed of movement when we get going.
Absolutely. No, it's and absolutely, it's important, like you said, to take a baseline. I think we'll get to Don's question here about maybe a brain scan and doing a comparison a little bit later here. But it's so important to have a baseline, right? Without having that baseline, you don't know what's changed. You don't know. You don't have the information to know if what we're doing is working. So having a baseline, taking that baseline, is so important to know, if what we're doing is effective and we should do more of that, or if we should kind of change our strategies. So maybe we can now get into some of that assessment today.
Sure.
With
I think before we get into that assessment, Dave, I think what we should do is, you guys were asking specifically about some of the components, right? Some of the basics, and we can we can actually get into this. And so at a super high level, we're just as a quick reminder, guys, the point of the hand mentor is it's designed to help you do high dose repetitive task practice. And this is the same type of therapy that's delivered with constraint induced movement therapy. You may have heard this called constraint therapy, or you may have heard this be called constraint or CIMT therapy. Basically, this is the best form of neuro-rehab that we know of at present. Basically, we know we have to do a lot of movements. We have to be actively engaged in those movements in order to induce changes in the brain that positively respond and result in improvements in function. So the hand mentor is designed to help you get those high doses of care in a more enjoyable way. And it also allows people with, like Iffy, who has maybe little to no movement, to engage in those activities. And the way it does this is through the process of a robotic exoskeleton, such as the one I have here. And so there's two primary components to the hand mentor system that's delivered to you. There's the part that goes on you, and that's this hand mentor component right here. It looks big and scary, but it's really quite simple. There is a sleeve here that houses an air muscle, and this air muscle has the ability to contract and relax. And when it contracts and relaxes, so when this thing contracts in here, it moves our hand mentor up into extension. And when it relaxes, it goes down into flexion. And so this is the interface by which we can help you move, either initiate movement if you have trouble doing that, or can help amplify your movements if you have trouble actually reaching the full range of motion. It also has a series of sensors on board that are monitoring your movements. These are, in the sort of scientific language, they're called kinematics. So this is your movements, your trajectories of movements, your velocity of movements, and how precise you're moving. And so we can track that. All of these bits of information are then sent via a cable here that comes out of the back of it to a big computer screen, basically. It's a big touch screen that presents, not only it has the sort of brains behind it, but it also has the ability to generate that help that can be fed back to the hand mentor. Now, it's not just a screen that's presenting the data to you. What it does is it translates that data not into just numbers, but it translates it into a virtual environment that allows you to basically play games. And this is part of the magic of this type of neuro-rehab, because doing those amounts of movements that are required to induce changes in our brain to cause those positive changes are very, very large, and it can be quite monotonous. And so the virtual environment gives you an experience that can be much more enjoyable. And what's really cool is that it not only is just telling you the consequences of your movement, but that understanding, that's called knowledge of results or knowledge of performance, that's actually incredibly important for you to have to train on. Let me give you a really quick example of this. It'll be a salient one for everyone. You guys, all of us, went through the process of learning to walk, right? When we were very, very young children, we learned how to walk. And we started from zero, and it takes maybe 12 months to 18 months to kind of learn to do it successfully and independently. You're, of course, by no means a proficient walker at that point, but it takes a long time to do that. And there's a progressive amount of movements that have to happen. You have to crawl, you have to stand up, and you have to start to walk a little bit independently. And invariably, what happens is you fall, okay? That becomes a very, very powerful stimulus to say to your body, hey, let's not do that again. Whatever I did, I recruited a series of muscles in a certain way that resulted in me on the ground. Not good. So going through stroke rehab is very much the same sort of thing. We're recapitulating that learning process where, hey, we have to recruit a different group of neurons that hasn't been recruited before. And then we have to figure out what configuration of those neurons have to be recruited to induce a positive movement. And if you don't have that feedback that tells you, hey, this is a good movement, I want to do more of this, it becomes very, very hard to extract a positive signal out of the noise that could be your movements that are maybe challenged. And so that biofeedback presents a very, very powerful learning stimulus for you to understand and get the most out of your training process. So that's kind of a quick example of the importance of biofeedback, something that we've either, maybe we don't experience ourselves because we don't really remember it, but we've all seen sort of a child learn how to walk. And we can kind of see those very, very powerful biofeedback bits that are being delivered to that kid, and the kid is learning from that. The same thing happens when you learn to ride a bike. If you crash, that's a very powerful stimuli. If you're learning to play an instrument, a musical instrument, you miss a note, it sounds very weird, right? You don't want to do that again. So you have to have that information of knowledge of performance and results in order to train on. So that's what the actual screen does. Now we actually can do a couple of really cool sort of motor control things with respect to the actual console, where we can maybe change the environment a little bit. And that way it becomes more maybe difficult to learn. So we can change the complexity of things. So it's not just a simple moving up and down, but we can maybe change the orientation, or we can change the complexity of the stimuli that you're seeing to make your movements that you learn more generalizable, right? Because it's not just simply you have to move in the world up and down. You have to move up and down with response to maybe some visual inputs, right? You have to maybe understand where, like for this bottle, for instance, I have to know where this bottle is in space. I have to generate a map, and I have a visual map, and I have to then go out and grasp that. So integrating visual information is also incorporated in the biofeedback. So that's kind of the high level of how the hand mentor works, and kind of some of the key components of motor control that we've looped in to its development.
Does that kind of make sense? Maybe we do you, or if you have any questions about any of that?
So far, so good. I'll speak on that.
Okay.
I was wondering if were they I was wondering if there were video tutorials that you could point to, kind of just illustrating,
yeah,
you know, a few things in terms of what we're looking at. Yeah, I hear a lot of the theoreticals as for coming
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Dr. Nick.
No,
So
always.
now it just goes to the practical, actual day-to-day, application of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have those videos. We'd be happy to maybe go over some of that as well. We'll send the videos. Maybe we can post some of that in the chat. Yeah, Dr. Nick, I think made some of those videos, especially with for high tone situations. I think maybe this situation we were probably not high tone, but of the various situations, independent dawning, things like that. Right, Dr. Nick, we have some of those videos.
That's correct. Yeah, a lot of those resources are either on the website directly, or a lot of them are actually on the actual consoles, on the hand mentor consoles, where you learn how to play the games, for instance. That's a lot of the day-to-day stuff too, right?
Okay.
Once you become proficient with how to put the hand mentor on independently, or maybe with minimal help, then it's all about how you can engage in the actual games. And that's the real, I guess, maybe the therapeutic activities. We call them games, but they're kind of analogous here. But yeah, and those tutorials are on each of the games. So whenever you pull up a new one, there could be a button in the bottom left-hand side that should be able to link you to a game tutorial, and that'll pop up and kind of go through a verbal and audio, I guess, a audio and visual walkthrough.
Absolutely. Okay. And we'll be sure to send those videos to you as well. We can post them on the support group as well. I think it always it's a benefit for all the new users that are coming in to have access to those resources. So no, that's a great point, and we'll be sure to make that available.
I'm just looking at the screen that the main screen where it says assessment, meetings, start PROM assessment, stop assessment. So I guess it'll start with the start PROM.
So we're on a very different situation here right now.
Okay.
So what we're on right now is this is a screen that is not classically used day to day. This is going to be something that we will log into when you come on Rehab Power Hour, or you're working with a clinician remotely, where we'll do a very, I guess, simple but thorough evaluation of certain types of movements, such as your active range of motion, your passive range of motion, and how much help you may need.
And that's a great differentiation there, actually. So typically the device, the hand or the foot, the Motus hand or the Motus foot, it's operating independently, in independent mode, where it has onboard AI that is kind of taking into the movements and motions that you have, measuring that, and kind of adjusting the difficulties of the exercises and the therapies that kind of is best for you. But in today's situation, we're not operating in independent mode. We're operating more on a dependent mode, where the Motus hand or the Motus foot is being controlled by Dr. Nick here remotely, and he's able to read information directly off of the device, as if he were kind of making a house call, a virtual house call, if you will, as if he were kind of there in person, and able to kind of get a sense for how much movement, how much resistance, how much tone, and all of those different factors, physical factors and kinematic factors that might be there, and then kind of make some clinical decision based on that, and make some adjustments to the exercises or the games that will be played, and hopefully kind of we are able to better tailor some of that to have a better experience. Yeah, but typically it'd be operating in that independent mode that we talked about earlier, where you wouldn't be seeing all of this. This is all there for Dr. Nick to really get into.
Okay.
Yeah, and so if you do have, I don't know if he's there, and if you guys are able to do the assessment today, we can actually go through that process. Is she there now?
I'm going through the assessment with you. Yeah, we have to. Yeah, we of course, as expected, we have other things to deal with during the day. Not to get into too much detail. So
sure.
Yeah,
sure. No worries there. I think
we're new users. This is only a week old. So it's kind of just to know the ins and outs. The setups, the baselines. Know exactly. And that's why I appreciate the wealth of information for what you're saying, that the screen, the system provides in and of itself, the walkthrough.
Yeah, and so I think that's a good suggestion here. So it looks like you guys, or you're actually kind of moving the hand mentor around. And so this is actually good for you to get some insight here.
Yeah,
There's on the Hand Mentor, what you're seeing on your actual screen, the computer screen, on that left-hand side, that's actually the instantaneous angle that's being recorded right now.
Right.
And so what I'll do, because if the Hand Mentor is not on, I'll just show you really quickly what I'm talking about, which would be part of that assessment. I would come in there and
maybe you can hold up the Hand Mentor so we can see it here on the video, if that's okay.
Oh,
me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it'd be great if you can hold it up, and Dr. Nick's gonna jump in here and provide some. So just hold it up and let the you're holding up the right side now. I think it's your right.
So just let it go like this.
Just let it go and let it fall down. Perfect. So just and Dr. Nick's gonna kind of give a demo here of what we can do remotely and what we can sense, and kind of right now we can kind of if you were here and she was in the Hand Mentor.
Yeah, and I think so. What we're going to do is part of this is going through a series of checks of active range of motion and passive range of motion. And so let's go through this real quick here. And what you would see on that side is I would control the actual assistance. So I would actually go in there and ask Iffy to go through a series of movements, but actively. And if she doesn't have movement, that's fine too. You can put the Hand Mentor down really quickly. That way you're not having to hold it up. But we would see that the Hand Mentor would be able to move through ranges of motion. And I would go through and walk through a passive range of motion screen, which would help me figure out how much tone there is. And I could figure out how much she could move into extension per se. And that would then help me figure out the upper limits and the lower limits for how we would have her be able to do her rehab. And so there's a series of steps that we would do in that assessment screen that you're in right now. And then we would be able to figure out those parameters and then walk through some of the games really quickly. And so we would just walk through this 3-step process and then go out into the gameplay. But I can walk you through that really quickly here. So if you hit the top left button, the back button.
So Dr. Nick, actually, if we can, do you think we can show you moving the Hand Mentor here on stream here in that assessment? I think that'd be actually pretty interesting for people to see. Oftentimes we kind of see people's hands already in it, but we can kind of show here that without a hand, how it moves up and down.
Yeah, so I think what we're going to do first, Dave, is we're actually going to go to just show some of the games. I think it'd be a bit more relevant for Iffy to have this on. So I think what we can do maybe next time, we can schedule you guys on the Rehab Power Hour when we can have her actually do the assessment. So we can have her in the Hand Mentor, we can actually walk through it. So I want to be very respectful of your time. So let's go ahead and have you guys hit the back button on the top left.
Okay.
And we'll go ahead and hit the home button. Okay, and then you can actually go ahead and hit begin therapy really quickly. Okay, so once we start this first game here, what we're going to do, I just want to walk you through a couple of the actual interfaces, and that way you can kind of get used to what Iffy can experience. And so there's a number of games that actually are present, and the games range from relatively simple games all the way up to very, very complex games. And so part of that assessment process is us actually figuring out what suite of games are going to be best for her. And this is actually one of the games that's generally good for most people. And so you can go ahead and hit the play button here. Actually, before you do that, you see the tutorial button right there on the left-hand side. That's going to be something that you can press when I'm not here and you're in a new game. And that will kind of help walk you through the process of how to play the game. But for the sake of today, you can go ahead and just hit the play button. And so what we can experience here is that your movements now are going to be directly mapped on to wherever the strongman's moving. So if you then try to go down, see those green arrows on the left-hand side? That's a common cue for all of the games, okay? And then on the right-hand side, you'll see this frequently in games, but not in all games. But on the right-hand side, you can see a blue bar that's kind of going up and down. It kind of fills up, okay? But what you want to do first is you want to go all the way down until you pick up that barbell. So move all the way down. There you go. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And you can see that blue bar is not all the way complete. There you go. Okay. And then the arrows, you notice they'll actually switch around and they'll start to point you in the new direction. So this game is trying to help you learn to uncouple the flexor and extensors. Exactly. This process of going into flexion and extension. It's actually really interesting that it seems like a relatively simple movement, but it actually is the foundation rather of a lot of real functional movements. And so that's one of the reasons why we work on it. And this process of learning to contract your flexors and then relax them and contract your extensors simultaneously, very, very challenging to do. For us who don't have a neurologic injury or don't have any residual impairments for neurologic injury, we take it for granted. But that is a very, very challenging task. And so that's one of the, this is one of those principal activities that would likely be good for IFI. Okay, so you can actually go ahead and just kind of walk you through the process too. And if at any point you're having trouble with any game, you can go ahead and press the screen.
Okay.
If you press the screen, that will always pause things.
Okay.
So you can just press it anywhere, and that will bring up that pause screen, and that will give you written instructions there as well. You can see that kind of gray panel. It will also you'll be able to control the volume there. You can kind of see that in the bottom left-hand side. You can kind of drag that around. But we can go ahead and skip to another game, and we'll walk through that one really quickly. Okay. And so while we do this, one of the things that I want to mention, so we have the ability to not only control what types of games that are played, but we can also control additional things about the games. We can change the amount of time you play versus the amount of rest you have. That's another really important aspect too, that kind of controls the intensity of how the actual rehab is dosed. And so what we'll do is we'll probably prescribe after we figure out all the parameters for IFI, we'll go through and prescribe some games, and then we'll go watch her performance. And then based on that performance, we may modify some things, like maybe increase the rest period if she's not used to it, to allow her to kind of build up in a slow and rational way, right? The last thing we want to do is go out of the gates sprinting too hard, and then we're not able to make it to the finish line, right? So we want to really be cautious about how we dose, how we prescribe the prescriptions. And so that will be one of the other things that we'll be monitoring. We'll go over here to the video real quick. We can actually skip this one. This one's a tone game. We've talked about this plenty of times. It's fairly simple, fairly easy to understand. Basically, what happens is our movements get mapped onto the thermometer, and the thermometer is that biofeedback that gives us some indication about where we need to reduce our tone. And so what we're trying to do is trying to reduce the temperature, which is analogous to reducing the tone in our upper extremity. But you can go ahead and hit skip, and we'll go through a couple other games. Any questions so far while we walk through this?
Not too bad, not too bad. No questions.
Okay. Very good. And I think this is actually our assessment screen. This is kind of whenever you are new to the Hand Mentor, for those of you who are not familiar with this or haven't experienced this yet, if you're using it independently, you'll often see this assessment screen pop up. And this will be one of the ways that we can get a baseline. And so we were talking about that earlier, the question from Stacy. This is one of those ways that we actually figure out not only a baseline, but this is a very reproducible thing that can happen frequently. And this gives us multiple time points to evaluate motor performance. So we can skip this one too. Okay. And so have you guys been able to actually use the Hand Mentor and be able to get it on IFI's arm?
Yes.
Okay, very good. And what is, was she able to do it independently, or did she need some help?
With assistance.
Okay, understood. I think the ultimate goal would be for her to be able to do it independently.
Right.
And maybe we can even talk through some of maybe the tricks of the trade to do that, because there are some tricks to allow individuals to do it independently. And so I think this will be our last one for the purposes of today, just kind of walking through it. We can go ahead and hit play. And this is our Cosmic Tennis, very similar to one of those very original games you may have experienced when you were younger. But you're controlling the paddle on the right-hand side, so the blue paddle, and our movements get mapped directly onto the paddle. So whenever you move down into flexion, the paddle will move down towards the bottom of the screen, and whenever you move up into extension, the paddle will move up towards the top of the screen. And the goal here is to prevent the ball from passing your paddle and to bounce it back to your competitor on the left-hand side, that red, the red individual, I guess the computer, the dark side. Okay. Okay, very good. So I think what we'll do is we'll actually just quickly, you're more than welcome to go through and play some of the games. And we're going to go to a couple of individuals really quickly. Before we do that, I just want to remind you, just if you have any questions that do pop up while we're talking through things, let us know. We're here to answer your questions, okay? But let me go ahead and just reintroduce everyone really quickly. This is your Rehab Power Hour. I'm your host, Dr. Nick Housley. Thanks so much for being here. I have my co-host here, David Wu, is with me as always. And it's great for you guys to join me on this Wednesday afternoon. And I think we're going to go over to Joe really quickly.
Yes.
Hi, Joe. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
How are you doing today, Joe?
I'm pretty good. Pretty good. I'm Joe Oppold in Rochester, Minnesota.
No, you don't. Everything.
This June will be 25 years stroke. I had a cerebral aneurysm, paralyzed my whole right side and my voice. I can walk, I can drive. I lift weights constantly. I can flex, and there is no extension.
Opening, yeah.
Yeah. So I sleep with claw, I call it, and it really relaxes it, and my tone is a little bit of the tone, and I'm working on it just by stretching and whatnot. So I have that with my hand. I can't run, and I walk with a slight limp.
Yeah.
But no cane or walker. I wrote a book, in autobiography. The title is That's a Great Haircut.
Okay.
I graduated from United States Military Academy at West Point.
There's the connection.
That's the shave. Then they had for my cerebral aneurysm, they shaved my head again.
I see the connection.
I think
I like it.
It's a good, and now I'm receding, so
So a little bit of a throwback between when you with the brain surgery, or the brain aneurysm, and then also your days at West Point. And by the way, thank you so much for your service. We have had certainly a lot of veterans, and we work with the VA a lot with the hand mentor and the foot mentor. Trying to help veterans and rural veterans as well get more access to healthcare.
I tried at the VA hospital in the Twin Cities here. They don't even know about you.
Yeah. A lot of it's the VA system. It's a very complex system. Maybe we can just leave it at that. There's a lot of moving pieces, and sometimes the communication between the VAs are not so good. But primarily in Georgia, in Alabama, in Oklahoma, in Florida, South Carolina, and then also in Wyoming, we've had
Montana.
Montana. Excuse me, Montana. That's right. We've had a good contact with a lot of the hospitals, neurologists at those VAs, but certainly, kind of every hospital is run a little bit differently with different clinicians. So
how about Denver, Colorado.
We've had some interactions. Is that right, Dr. Nick? We had some interactions with Denver, but I think maybe on the more logistical side. I think there's a big hub for equipment in Denver.
Yep, for medical devices in Denver, that's correct. And there's a number of other hospital systems and clinics that are using them across the country outside of the VA too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And maybe we can connect you with one of them as well, if that's something that you might be interested in. So
I'm
very good.
And playing with toy. I mean, it's could be beneficial. I have the Bioness. I'm sure you've heard it's quite a, and I had it for my foot and my hand. It was definitely taking away from some of that tone, which was good. And I also had Botox in my hand. I didn't like that as much because it took away from the flex and lifting weights and stuff like that. I wanted to flex the barbell or the weights and whatnot.
Yeah, that's one of the that's one of the consequences. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Maybe you can, I absolutely. I think we're getting to the same destination here. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, Dr. Housley, the effects of Botox. And I think this kind of goes well with Mark's question. Mark, on here, his comment here, I've heard a young kid getting Botox injections in his hand and that was helping him. I think maybe we're talking about Mac and Faye, Mac's mom, that has recently come on the Rehab Power Hour and talked about the Botox injections. So what does Botox do? Is it and then is it always helpful, or sometimes are there downsides to getting Botox?
Yeah, I mean, this is a good question. We've talked about this a little bit before, but maybe not so specifically about the pros and cons necessarily. And I'll first start off by saying that, of course, you want to go work with your medical provider, your physician, your physiatrist, or your neurologist to make these decisions and make it, because there are always pros and cons to any medical treatment. But generally speaking, how Botox works is it's basically a paralytic, right? And so that's a fancy way of saying it kind of temporarily paralyzes your muscles. And the way it does this is that there are neurons that are in your spinal cord that connect to our muscles, that when they fire, they contract the muscles. And that's what helps us move. And what Botox does is it temporarily kind of breaks that connection a little bit. And that's exactly how, go ahead.
No, so that's really interesting. We're talking about getting more movement. We're talking about also Mac getting his Botox and letting him get more movement. But you're talking about Botox here as a paralytic, something that turns off movement. How is that something that helps people get more movement?
Yeah, and this is why that was the basic mechanism of action as how Botox works.
Yeah.
But the consequences of Botox means that it can often turn off spasticity or significant tone, because there are a number of reasons why you can't move, right? If there are no connections going to your muscles, you're not able to send any signal. That's often called a flaccid paralysis. Now, if you have a significant tone, you have a lot of tightness in your arm and your hand that is preventing you from moving. Those two things they're very, very different, but they would result in the same outcome, right? You can't move. So in the cases where you have super high tone or a lot of spasticity, it actually stands to benefit by having some of those overactive nerves turned off. And so that's what basically the Botox can do, is it can temporarily alleviate some of that overactivity to allow you to gain volitional control of your arm again, or your hand in this case.
Okay.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. It's so there's two ways that people maybe have, well, maybe more than two ways, but two ways we talked about here that people don't have movement. One is that the signals are not getting there. And then the other one is maybe too much signal from one side is getting there. That's kind of like the pulley system that we talked about earlier. Yep. And for those that have too much signal from one side getting there, that's causing kind of maybe these fist-like or being pulled in, also with the foot as well, with drop foot. when you have an imbalance and too much signal, too much activation on one side, having that paralytic that maybe tempers, lowers, or disables a little bit of that movement can actually result in more overall movement if it's really the imbalance there. So if I understand correctly, Dr. Nick, that's how for some people, for some specific cases, and that's maybe why you talk about seeing your neurologist, seeing your physiatrist, that Botox as a paralytic, as something that reduces movement, can actually help you get more overall movement, more control over your volitional movement. So that's a absolutely great benefit. Maybe are there any downsides to Botox? Is there something that we can overdo?
Yeah, there are some downsides, and generally speaking, the downsides are fairly obvious. And what I mean by fairly obvious are if you overdo it and you get the dosing wrong, you can basically there's a happy medium, right? Like, let's say you have a lot of activity and you want to reduce a little bit of it such that you gain some movement, but the dosing is a bit complex. Of course, the physicians have been doing this for a long time, but they can still get things wrong, and you might overdo it where you have some over reduction in your basically the tone activity, which kind of does the counteract, it kind of pushes you more towards the flaccid side. And so the other thing too that's really interesting is that there are some long-term consequences too. Actually, the Botox becomes less and less effective, and there are actually just upper limits on how many doses that the FDA likes to give people, just because it is given locally in the muscle, which is true, but there are some concerns about what are called toxicities over long periods of time. And so they will actually limit the number of times you can go and get Botox, specifically in a given time.
So a little bit of, as with any treatment or drug or medicine, maybe some tempering effects over time that can reduce the effectiveness, and maybe something that we want to use strategically as well.
Yeah, they're thought of as acquired resistances. That's the terminology you use, right? Where you basically have let's say you have X effect from something. It's like you take a Tylenol, right? You take Tylenol over and over and over again, and you build up a resistance to it. Same sort of concept there. It's a bit more complex on the mechanism side, but the same sort of concept.
Well, maybe building a resistance to coffee, as I know some of our coffee aficionados out there, where if you're drinking a lot of coffee all the time, some of that effects of that caffeine is going to be tempered as well. On the body's an incredible thing. No, I know Dr. Nick is a big coffee drinker, as am I. But certainly, the effects of being accustomed to something we see in coffee, and in this case for Botox as well. So absolutely similar. Interesting.
And Dave, if you don't mind, I might interject here. We actually have a comment here from Rhonda on our live stream here. She's actually very similar to Joe's question here. She's asking, she's using another drug, Roboxan here, to relieve some tone. There's a bunch of different things. Let me say that everyone may have heard of this idea of Botox. But that's not the only way that you can help reduce tone. There's a number of other drugs. There's a suite of drugs that can help with muscle relaxation. Some of them are injectables, which go directly into the muscle or into the nerve. There's other ones that are given in ingestion, like orally, right? It's just a pill you take. There are other ones that are more complex. This is not so common in after stroke, but it's often common after spinal cord injury, where they'll do a pump that is embedded inside of you that will be delivering some of these special types of drugs directly to your nervous system. So they'll do an indwelling catheter that goes inside of your spinal cord, and it'll basically be delivering a slow infusion of a drug called baclofen. You guys may have heard of that term called a baclofen pump. There are oral versions of baclofen too that you take. The challenge with any of these drugs is the route of administration, right? When you take something systemically, i.e. through your mouth and through digestion, it can cause a bunch more side effects. So it can make you very drowsy, lightheaded, sleepy, these sorts of things. And then the effects are not necessarily so concentrated. Rhonda, I'm not going to venture into the recommendation realm here for you. I'll say if your physician is prescribing this, you should follow the recommendations. But there are, just as a sense of scope here, there are a number of ways that we can combat tone. There are pharmacologic ways you can do it, and there are also motoric ways that you can do it with respect to rehab. That's one of the reasons why the Hand Mentor is designed the way it is, and we have these programs that can help you non-pharmacologically help address tone.
Yeah, and I think last Monday we had a parent, a mother and a kid on Rehab Power Hour, and he had suffered a gunshot wound, and as a result from the gunshot wound, suffered brain injuries and has impairments on his, I believe it was his right side, and had a baclofen pump as well as part of to use that as a to help reduce some of that tone. And they exactly talked about this, that they had to keep increasing the dosage in order to keep kind of the same amount of the effects of the relaxation, to a point where actually they couldn't sustain the effects, and but really doing movements and doing rehab was something that was really effective at the end of the day in helping reducing some of that tone. So hopefully, we can talk here today about what we can do with Joe and with the hand mentor about maybe reducing some of that tone and getting it so that he can do his weightlifting, being able to flex without losing some of that to the Botox.
Yeah. So Joe, what other kind of questions do you have for us? I know you've had a really long experience now at this point with rehab. And so I want to, my main goal here is to be a resource for you to answer the questions.
Way back when, 24 years ago, they said 1 year and you get your PT and OT and speech. And after that, you might not get much. But I have. And I guess you know me.
Good.
Kind of. And the motivation, and if I get this Motus Nova, will it improve?
No, that's a fantastic question. And in your case, 24 years after you've had your injury, we hear a lot people talk about. In your case, it was this 1 year. You're going to get improvements in 1 year. We've had lots of different time frames. Some people we hear, oh, my PT, my OT, or somebody told me, some clinician told me 3 months. That's you're going to in the next 3 months after your stroke or injury, your traumatic brain injury, whatever that may be. Next 3 months, that's when your golden period, we've heard it called that as well. That's when you're going to make most of your gains. But then after that 3 months, you should kind of maybe not think about any more gains. Or we've heard this about 6 months, and it sounds like in your case, 12 months was this idea. And you're going to make a lot of gains in 12 months, and then maybe not so much. And we hear this a lot. And maybe we can talk a little bit about this today. I think we talked about a little about in last week's Power Hour about a little bit about this as well. But Dr. Nick, can you tell us about some of that? Is there any science behind? Is there any clinical evidence behind this 3 months, 6 months, or in Joe's case, this 1 year marker where we kind of go into a crystal ball and say, this is when you're going to make gains, and then after that, our brain's going to change somehow and turn off the ability to make changes.
Yeah, and this is you guys who are not new to Rehab Power Hour will remember many a soapbox that I've stood on. So let me pull my soapbox out really quickly and stand on this. And this concept is really just patently false. This idea that there is a finite window of recovery, and it comes from, I guess, a good place, I think. They're trying to manage expectations. But the truth of the matter is, basically every time we do these studies investigating individuals who have chronic stroke, we see time and time again that they are able to make meaningful improvements, significant improvements in their function of either their upper or lower extremity. And I think they're kind of convolving a couple of things, which is why we are drawing these assertions that, hey, maybe there's a finite window that we can recover in. And that's because maybe later on, it takes more and more effort to gain movements, but that doesn't mean it's closed. It just maybe means that we have to do more and more rehab to get larger and larger gains. And so I think that's where they're kind of convolving that. The other thing that's actually a bit kind of convolved here, I know we're probably going to get into this, Dave, but basically there is this concept of the dosing that you get in this traditional rehab program is very, very non-stationary. What I mean by that is it's not the same from when you're in a hospital to 10 years post-stroke, right? When you're in the hospital and you're in that acute phase of rehab, and you might be going to the inpatient rehab facility, you're getting a lot of rehab, in some cases as much as 3 hours a day in these inpatient stays. And then that tapers off, right? Quickly, when you get discharged to the home environment, you're kind of on your own. You may have outpatient or some home health, but you're getting maybe a couple hours of therapy a day. And so what happens is they start to convolve these concepts of, oh, you're not getting better. But the thing is you're not getting better because you're not getting as much rehab. So that's one of the reasons why we focus so heavily on that transition period of subacute to chronic stroke survivors. And let's try to make sure that we're getting those high doses of care when you're in the home, because that's where we see there is still people are receptive and they're still improving, but it's hard for people to get those high doses.
Yeah. And certainly something we really talked about last week as well. We think that, this is coming from, there's no malicious intent here. This is coming from a good place. It's well-intentioned. Clinicians often talk about their experiences where they see stroke survivors making a lot of those gains in the first 12 weeks, in the first 3 months, 6 months, or whatever that may be. But a lot of those factors are that, like Dr. Nick said, when you're in inpatient rehab, you're getting like 15 hours a week, 3 hours a day, like 15 hours, sometimes 20 hours a week of rehab. And then when you switch to outpatient, you're going from 20 hours to oftentimes 2 hours a week. And that dramatic drop, that factor of 10, that has, the science shows, the science says, has a lot of effects on changing perhaps the rate or the slope of your recovery, how quickly you're making gains. And then that's perceived as, oh, well, you're not going to make gains, or your gains are going to slow down significantly. And that other factor that Dr. Nick talked about, where in the beginning, a lot of your gains might be the low hanging fruit, might be the easier to make gains. And then over time, it's going to get more difficult. But by no means, the science, the evidence says there's no evidence that shows, quite to the contrary, there's evidence that does show that the brain can continue to make changes. And I mean, this kind of makes sense as well. It's not like our brains, it's not like we stop learning after a certain age. It's not like you can't learn new skills, you can't learn new things. It might be more difficult to learn a new language, at age 40, age 60, than maybe when you were 5 or 6 years old. It might be, you might have to put more time, more repetitions into it, but it's something that we all can do. Our brains can learn. That rewiring, that learning, that's really the same thing. Through practice, through repetitions, through trying to do something, we can make gains. And that's a lot of what, as Dr. Nick was talking about, we focus on here at Motus, allowing you to get those hours, those meaningful repetitions at home, without having to drive in or like a lack of access be denied from insurance. Being able to do those repetitions on your own is so important to driving more of those gains. So yeah, I'm also, I think I got onto that soapbox there with you. Dr.
We often
Dr.
do
Nick,
that, Dave, where we share that soapbox, and we'll
we've seen a lot of stroke survivors, and I mean, this is kind of the pattern. They make a lot of gains in the beginning while in inpatient. They go home they get discharged to outpatient. They lose access to a lot of rehab. Sometimes they get denied additional outpatient rehab, and then the gains stop. And and they're kind of told, oh, it doesn't seem like you're going to get any better, or you're going to make any more gains. And well, of course not, if they're not getting any more rehab. And then of those same people, we see them get high dose rehab with the hand mentor, or maybe with other things as well, other types of therapies, and we see them make gains, we see them make changes. And that's really kind of one of the frustrating things that one of the things that grinds my gears. It's so frustrating to see people that we give up on that clearly can do better. And we're really on a mission at Motus to make that rehab much more accessible to everyone. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox and hopefully that answers your question here, Joe, and also with kind of the questions that we have here in the chat about what is this idea of making more gains over time?
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions, or I have to go pick up my girls at school. So, but Mr. Gonzalez must be a tech or salesman.
Yes, Matt. Yes, that's right,
Yeah,
Mr. Gonzalez.
He said he'd call me like tomorrow just to see how I thought about this, and I'll ask him if we can get that Motus Loga.
The Motus Nova,
the Motus hand, yeah.
With up in the Twin Cities, the VA hospital, and the Mayo Clinic. So just to see.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Joe, I think we can certainly go down those paths too. I think we are all about supporting getting the hand mentors into clinics. I think one of the challenges now is being able to go in and utilize them given COVID restrictions and all of that. And so I think being able to get one in your home is going to be probably the quickest way that you can get to use it and trial it.
Right.
Yeah. That's one of the things that we just generally recommend, like, kind of where the rubber meets the road is where you're going to use it, and that's going to be in your home. And so that's kind of where all the tests need to happen, and to make sure that you're going to get utility out of it.
Yeah. And prior to putting Motus hands and Motus feet into the home, we have there are a lot of our devices in clinics, about 200 clinics and hospitals, about 600 devices all across the country, and but at the end of the day, it was so hard for stroke survivors like you, Joe, to just get an appointment booked to use those devices that we said, hey, we really, they're not doing a lot of good sitting in these clinics. They really have to be accessible at home for them to make a significant difference. Because even when they were in the clinics, stroke survivors only could get an hour or two a week on the hand mentor or the foot mentor, and that really wasn't that. That wasn't making a significant amount of difference in driving those repetitions, those hours for that brain change.
So how much is the price? I don't.
Yeah. So that's a great question. That's a fantastic question. So that's kind of what we've been working on over the past 3 years. So for the devices that we have deployed in the VA. For these 200 clinics and hospitals, depending on the configuration, they're about $20,000 or more for each of these robots, and that's pretty expensive. And when we looked at this, we said that's way too expensive. We looked at this and we said we want to have these go in the home, but $20,000. There's no way that's a reasonable price to ask people to pay. So we've been working on re-engineering what the parts of the Motus hand and the Motus foot in a way to have it provide all the functionality, and have it independent, easily to be used independently, right? Because there's no clinician now coming into your home and helping you put it on. We need to have instructions for everyone. The device needs to be able to operate independently on that kind of the AI side that we talked about earlier. All of those features needed to be added in. In the past 4 years, we really worked on that. And just last year, we were able to launch the home version. And currently it's at $399 a month. And how did we get to that number? Because it's still, we completely acknowledge that's still a very expensive price. But how did we get to $399? Well, we know that typically the copays for a average outpatient rehab is about something like $40 to $50 per session. And you're doing these about 2 to 3 times a week. So the full cost of the sessions may be $150, $200 for an hour of rehab. And the insurance pays for a good bit of that, but there's always some kind of copay. With Medicare, it's something like $40 to $50 or around that for a copay and co-insurance combined for $40 and $50 per session. And that adds up to about $100 a week if you're doing 2 to 3 sessions a week. So that $100 a week is about $400 a month. And we said, okay, we have to at least get to that or better. That's on the engineering side what we're shooting for before we can release it into the home. And we were able to achieve that kind of last year with bringing that $20,000 device to something that's comparable to what people were already paying for copays. And that's when we said, okay, it's time, let's put it out there. We realize it's still expensive. It still can't help everyone, but it can start helping some people. And that's why we launched it there. We're still working hard on bringing down the price. If that $399 is financially not affordable for you, talk to Matt, talk to Mr. Gonzalez, and there might be other programs that we have that can help reduce, or like we have the 30-hour challenge. There are a number of things that maybe we can do, and we can try to work with you to bring down that financial burden. But rest assured that having the price come down, that is something that we've been actively working on for years, and one of our primary goals. And we agree with you. We have people that are frustrated about how expensive it is. We agree with that. We don't like that either. But this is kind of where the engineering is out now today. And for the people that it can help, we want to get it out there. And then for the people that are still out there, know that we're working hard at it to make it more available to you. And that's absolutely our mission at Motus Nova. And I think I got back on that soapbox here briefly, talking about the costs, but that's also something else that really drives kind of what we do, because access is that cost, that component is such an important part of access. And we know how to help stroke survivors. It's the access to that rehab that we need to solve today, and that's really why we're here. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, it does.
Guys, I just wanted to say thank you. I have to step out to and hey, Joe, I salute you. Wow, you got so many years. I commend the effort. You're an inspiration in and of itself.
You want to read my book?
Yep, I will stay tuned in. To
it's only $10
and watch
Amazon.
Got you. Thank you guys.
We'll be sure to link that, Joe.
I will.
Yeah.
We will stay tuned. We will stay tuned in and follow up on a few more things. Okay.
Very good.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you both, guys. Yeah. So what we'll do, guys, now is we'll just quickly reintroduce everyone again. This is a Rehab Power Hour. I'm your host, Dr. Nick Housley. With me in the studio is David, our CEO and founder. Thanks so much for being here, Dave. And if you guys have questions or comments, do post them in the live stream here. You can also email me at rehabpowerhour@motusnova.com or give me a call at 404-594-4244. Leave me a voicemail, and we'll be sure to listen to those questions and get you an answer. But I think we're going to go over quickly to next spotlight user. We have Patrick, I believe. Patrick, can you hear us?
Yes. How you doing?
Pretty good, Patrick. If you wouldn't mind, if you start by maybe just introducing yourself. Tell me your name, where you're calling from, and when you had your neurologic injury.
My name is Patrick, and I'm calling from Birmingham, Alabama. I've had a stroke about 7 months ago, August 4th, and I've been using the Motus about a month now, a little less than a month now. It seems to be helping me a little bit.
Very good, yeah. And so tell me a little bit about maybe your first couple of, maybe your experience so far. You said it's been helping you a little bit. What can you maybe define that? What is what you're feeling?
I've been having trouble raising my right wrist up, which is my dominant side. It's been helping me get my wrist raised up, elevated a little bit, more so than it has been in the past. So I count that as success.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that's great to hear that, Patrick. And I think it's good to just mention too that sometimes, guys, it takes some time to realize these changes, right? It can take, the clinical studies often evaluate people 3 months after we start using therapy or using the hand mentor. And so it can take, sometimes it takes less time than that. I think we've had people come on and seen improvements in the first couple of weeks. That's great. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than that. There's a distribution. So I think, Patrick, you were right in the thick of it there. And I think we'll, if you continue to get your hours and do your rehab, probably expect to see more improvements coming down your way. Now, for our time today, would you like to do an assessment? We can kind of get into making sure the hand mentor is tuned up to you if you'd like.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you a question real quick. Do you have your hand mentor powered on right now?
My wife helped me. It's powered on, yes.
Okay, very good, very good. And do you have your hand mentor on right now?
No, I don't have it on. I don't have it on my hand as of right now.
And Patrick, I think we're not getting any video from you. If that's something that you can turn on, I know that can be helpful for Dr. Nick to see, kind of especially if you've got it on in a good way, or in a good posture, that kind of thing. But if the video is something that's hard to do, that's okay too. I know that sometimes it can be challenging. Oh, perfect. There we go.
Can you see me? Can you see me? Turn the light.
Okay. You want me to put it on?
Yeah.
No.
We can see you, and you look great. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Well, so Patrick, tell me a little bit about what kind of function you have in your hand. Tell me a little bit about what's going on there.
Well, actually, it's my hand and my leg.
Okay.
I'm having OT and physical therapy done. So far, I'm walking with a cane. I can walk without my cane, but as far as my hand goes, I have limited range of motion as far as like lifting my hand all the way up. I can lift it out about shoulder length, And,
now, Patrick, are you talking about lifting out like this? Or are you talking about lifting your hand like this? Which one are you talking about? Like lift like up, or for your whole arm up?
The whole, both actually.
Both. Okay. Very good. It's just good to know. Got to have a common language there. I want to make sure I'm understanding you.
Yes. Perfect. And I see that you're holding your camera up right now, Patrick. Is there maybe somewhere we could set it down? So, and ideally we can get a shot with you, and if we can see that you're a hand mentor, just so that Dr. Nick here can get a good perspective of good perspective of what's going on. I know sometimes camera work can be a little bit challenging, and that's okay too. I think that especially in these times, we're all getting kind of a little bit of crash course on video teleconferencing and those kinds of things. Very good. If we could maybe turn the camera down no, you're looking great, but if we can see a little bit of the hand or the hand mentor, that would be Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Very good. Okay. And so hopefully today we'll be able to kind of go get into an assessment with Dr. Nick here to see if your hand mentor is tuned well. So I think prior you were saying you had only some movement in your hand, and now you're getting a little bit more extension in the wrist, is it, or is it in the shoulder and the elbow here?
In the wrist area, I need some more in my shoulder as well, and my fingers are starting to move, are moving relatively fine now. Good. But I still can hold a pencil, write with the pencil, something like that.
Okay. You can write with the pencil. Okay. Is that a task? Go ahead.
I cannot write with a pencil. I play drums too, so I'm trying to get back to drumming.
So I know you mentioned writing with a pencil. What's maybe something else that you look to be wanting to do? Writing with a pencil, maybe some other activities?
Yes, playing the drums.
Yeah, playing the drums. Good. Anything else?
And hopefully learn to play piano.
Learning to play piano.
Motor.
That's
very
fantastic.
Good,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
most definitely typing, because I recently earned my MSW in last spring from University of Alabama, and I want to get into that field, and so it requires
go
typing.
Blazers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations
we do a lot of
Go, Dave.
Congrats on the MSW. And we do a lot of research with is it UAB? Was it University of Alabama Birmingham, or is it University of Alabama? Because I think I heard UAB, but you might have said.
I said University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa, but I'm in Birmingham.
Excuse me. Yeah, I think I conflated those two. You said you were from Birmingham, so and then you said University of Alabama, so I went to UAB. But of course,
Dave,
I want to respect.
Those are fighting words, man. You got to be careful.
Roll Tide, yeah, Roll Tide. I want to respect. I want to respect the football teams here. The Blazers are with UAB. Roll Tide with University of Alabama. But you're out of Birmingham. That's great to see. I want to make sure I fix that, correct that before we get too many angry emails. I know college football's a big deal. And we certainly respect that. Very good.
Mm-hmm.
So getting back to some of those functional tasks, that's great. Maybe we can work on some things, Dr. Nick. Is that we had writing with a pencil. That might be on the difficult side. We've had drums, we had piano, and we had typing. What do you think is something that maybe we can work towards?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of cool things, especially if you're really motivated by the drums. It sounds like that's super motivating to you. The cool thing about drums is it requires not only a grasping. So I think that's actually a good compromise because it requires grasping to grab the stick, but it also requires wrist control in order to be able to do it. So I think that could be a good compromise. And what we could do is start by, and this is again with our conversation in the past hour about baseline. It's not only good to get baselines with respect to the hand mentor, but to get baselines with respect to maybe a functional task. And so maybe what we could do is we could even have you, Patrick, take a video of you trying to grab one of your drumsticks, or maybe two drumsticks, and then we can have you start to maybe move them around a little bit, and we can see exactly what type of song you can play. And we can track that over time to see how quickly you can move your wrist, and maybe on a snare, how quickly you can you do 60 beats a minute? Can you go up to more than that? Like, what are you capable of doing? We can kind of track that over time. That's a really nice objective thing.
Okay.
What do you think about Patrick? I think that I know with working with Dr. Nick, he's always a big fan of functional goals. It's great to have numbers on a device about how much range of motion you have, how much strength you have. But at the end of the day, what the rubber meets the road is, can you do something that you weren't able to do before? And I think we've seen videos of some individuals, Heather opening a fridge and opening a bottle. Those are the wins. Those are the kind of seeing that's so fantastic that you're not only can we tell you that you have more movement, but you know it because you can do more things independently. And maybe something like trying to practice with the drums, trying to practice with that drumstick, that might be something that we just record a 30-second clip of now, and to get that baseline that we talked about earlier here in the show. It's so important to see where we're coming from. And then over the next few weeks, gradually trying to do that over and over again and seeing if we can make some gains in that department and moving you more towards that ability to sit down and play the drums.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think in the interim, what we can do, Patrick, is we can actually go through one of those assessments really quickly. So let's go ahead on your side and go to your telehealth button for me.
My telehealth?
Please. And actually, before we get too far into this, I'm going to ask, have you had a chance to put your hand mentor on yet?
Yes, I put it on.
Excellent. Very good. And then we'll go to assessment for me. Okay. And you guys can follow along in the live stream here. We'll see on the left-hand side. Patrick, what number do you see on the far left side for me?
On the far left side, 102.
Okay. It's moving around a little bit?
Yes, moving around.
Excellent. Very good. We are on the same page. It's just good to make sure we are seeing the same thing. So I'll go back over to my assessment screen here, and we'll do a couple of things. We'll do a 3-step process here, Patrick. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this data, but I want to get a sense of where we can move first. So Patrick, what I want you to do is go ahead and move your hand mentor down into flexion as far as you can for me. Have it move down.
Okay.
Very good, very good. Got some good flexion movement there, almost down to 20 degrees. And then when you feel like you've gotten as far as you can, just stop and relax for me. And then when you feel like you've relaxed, go ahead and try to move up into extension as far as you can.
Okay.
Very good, very good. Very good. Almost about 16 degrees of extension right there. Very good. and then relax as soon as you feel like you've gotten a good effort there. Very good. So that's good movement, I'd say. And then that's a fair amount of active movement. So now I'm going to do a passive range of motion or a tone check. So all you have to do, Patrick, is just relax. And your one job right now, at least at the start, is to tell me when you start to feel the hand mentor move your hand the very first time. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
And here, Patrick, real quick, we have a question from the audience. How long has it been since you've had your stroke?
7 months, going 8 months.
Very, very good. So there we hear the pump going.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, Patrick, I don't want you cheating and looking at your hand.
Okay.
I don't want you to rely on the hand, the pump sound to tell you when you've moved. Okay.
Okay.
Just tell me when you feel the hand mentor move you.
Okay.
And the other way to kind of make this easier is, if you want, you can close your eyes.
Okay.
No cheating.
Okay.
I feel it. I feel it moving.
Very good. Very good. Pretty good detection there, I'd say.
And what were you testing there, Dr. Nick? Why is it so important to understand when Patrick can feel his hand being moved and not just look down and see when his hand is being moved?
Yeah, because we have this system that's a sensory system, just like we have vision and taste and hearing. There's a sensory system that helps us understand where our bodies are in space. And oftentimes after a stroke, that can be damaged. And this can help me understand how you may perform better. So if you have your sensory systems are intact, this is called proprioception, and it relies on a bunch of really cool sensors that we don't have time to get into. But basically, if we have some understanding that we have good detection, that gives me some indication that system's intact and the circuit is closed effectively, because it's called a sensory motor circuit, because it actually loops around and helps us control our movements. So Patrick, you can go ahead and open your eyes and relax for me. I saw some good numbers there. We went almost all the way up to 50 degrees, if not actually 50 degrees. And that's going to come down and relax for you.
Okay.
How was that? I didn't see any issues there. Okay.
No.
Very good. Very good. And I see a little bit right there, a little bit of residual pressure in there. That's okay. So let's go ahead and have you, from this position, go ahead and have you move down into flexion for me one more time, as far down as you can go. Okie dokie, very good. And then relax. And the last thing we're going to do is pick up around here. And what I want you to do, just relax. The hand is going to kick in. From this position, what I want you to do is go ahead and move up into extension for me, as far as you can go.
And this idea of proprioception that you were talking about earlier, Dr. Nick, we can, knowing where our limbs are in space, an important a perception of everyday tasks. A good example maybe if you can close your eyes, you can put your hand on your head, and you don't have to watch your hand kind of approach your head and know where your head is. You kind of, even without looking, where your head is, and that system being important in a lot of our everyday functions, where we don't have to be watching where our hand goes to pick up a cup, or even maybe walking, we don't have to be looking down to see where. And having loss of this proprioception system being an important thing for us to try to rehab, being as it's so important to do a lot of the tasks that we do every day.
Yep, that's exactly right, Dave. And Patrick, are you still doing okay?
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay, I'm gonna have you go up one more time here. Hand metrics gonna kick in. Okay, so here, I want you to move up as far as you can into extension, as far up as you can go. Very good, very good. Now see, with assistance, guys, before we were getting to around 0 degrees or right into neutral. And now with assistance, is able to move up into full extension into 35 degrees. So Patrick, now here, go ahead and move down into flexion for me as far as you can go. Try to go
move down.
Yes, please. Maybe fairly hard, and that's okay. There is some resistance there.
Okay.
And that's okay. Very good. Bring this down here. Okay. So I'm actually fairly happy with this, Patrick. So you can actually go ahead and go back on the top left-hand side. And then we'll actually go through a couple of games real quick, okay?
Okay.
So in there, Patrick was able to get to 0 degrees on his own, and then with the hand mentor assisting, he was able to get to 35, which is maybe somewhere like here. How common is it that that Patrick or a stroke survivor can get to greater movements with assistance?
With assistance, I mean, that's very common. I'd say that's the whole point of the hand mentor, right? The hand mentor is there to help you gain access to large ranges of motion of active movement, or in this case, active assisted movement. So that's very, very common. It's not definitive. I mean, but I'd say above 90% of people have the ability to move more with assistance. So Patrick, you can go on the top left side. You can go ahead and hit the home button, and we can go to play and begin therapy when you get a chance.
Okay.
Okay, very good. And one thing we'll do here, Patrick, while we get these the games pulled up, do you have any sort of preferences on the games? Because you've been playing now for a while. Do you have any sort of preferences or anything that's going weird with some of your games?
I like the fishing game.
Okay, yeah.
And the card game.
Okay, very good. So let's go ahead and just play this one real quick. And I want to do a couple of things. So go ahead and hit play.
And which card game may that be, Patrick? Because I think we've got more than one. Do you remember which card game it was?
Only one I have is Solitaire.
Yep. All right, perfect, perfect. And I'm sure we'll be getting to the others soon. I think that we're going to be adding well, we have Blackjack. I think we're going to be adding I think we're calling it as a card game. I don't
think we're calling it
I'll
Countdown.
leave it up.
We're calling it Countdown.
Oh, kind of Countdown. We're kind of calling it Countdown. I thought we were, well, maybe internally we were calling it but Countdown is another great name for that game.
Yeah, once we load that out and push that out to everyone, you will you'll probably recognize it. So
we'll want to see the high scores as well of our regulars kind of fighting to be fighting to be number one. We're going to be excited to see who gets that top spot.
Yeah, Patrick, you can go ahead and hit play. So I'm going to be making changes here. So whenever you see the screen pause, go ahead and just play for me, okay?
Okay.
Okay. So you go down as far as you can. There we go.
Nice.
What are your thoughts there, Patrick? A little bit harder than before?
Huh?
Is it a little bit harder than before?
Yes.
Okay. I did increase it slightly, not drastically, about 5 or 6 degrees difference there. Just to make sure we actually have consistency. There we go.
And we're involving our whole body there. I see. Is that common there, Dr. Nick? And maybe talk a little bit about that.
It is. I think especially when we're early on trying to really regain function, we often find that we're really effortful in trying to put all of our body weight behind movements. And that's not only just as an effort function, but also the nature of when we're learning how to recontrol a limb. We often just recruit everything basically, and you recruit your shoulder, your elbow, all the muscles get recruited, and that forces
a lot of activation.
A lot of activation.
Absolutely. And is that a bad thing? Is that something that maybe we want to avoid doing, or is that something that's okay?
So I think in certain contexts, the ultimate goal is for us not to have to do that, right? Because what we want to do ultimately is be able to have discrimination with respect to movements, right? So I can move my finger without having to move my wrist, and I can move my wrist without having to move my elbow, right? We want to be able to ultimately discriminate all those individual joints and move them independently, because that allows us to have more good control of our limb. But that may not be the most important thing early on. We may need to get the movement control back, and then we can work on discriminating the movements. So that's maybe a more a more remote goal.
Yeah. So eventually we want to be able to control that independently, specifically, but starting with let's get it moving at generally, and then kind of fine tune that broad activation into a more narrow and specific activation with maybe some of the fine motor control games as well, or fine motor control exercises, I should say. So no, that's a fantastic feedback, because I know that we get questions about from people, is it okay to be moving my leg even when I'm doing on the hand mentor, or moving my hand or my other leg when I'm on the foot mentor? That's something that's pretty common.
And I will say this: there's often we'll see people, and I think we've talked about this a couple times about doing bimanual tasks, right? So much of what humans do naturally is bimanual tasks, right? You can see me here, I'm gesticulating with both hands. And so rehab that engages both limbs simultaneously can often result in better outcomes. So there's a lot of nice evidence for that. And so what can happen too is if you find you're doing the hand mentor, maybe the hand that's not in the hand mentor can mimic those movements. So if you're moving up with say my hand mentor's on my right side, I'm going to move up with my left simultaneously. So you can kind of leverage more movements that kind of help get that recruitment up.
That bimanual movement, and we know the brain is so interwoven together, and that mirror therapies and these other types of therapies kind of rely on kind of co-activation and activating different parts of the brain to kind of help recruit some of those movements. We have actually a question here from Mary Ann Zinke, I believe it is. Apologies if I'm getting that name wrong here from the audience. I'm 13 years post-stroke. I have full movement of my hands, but my foot drop has caused numerous falls. Can you please show the foot mentor and send some info about this? So that's a great question, Mary Ann. Unfortunately, today we have a few of our users, Spotlight users with hand mentors. I think on today is Wednesday. On Monday, we had a few users with foot mentors. But maybe Dr. Nick, talk a little bit about that. How is the foot mentor different? Are the concepts different here? All these things that we've been talking about so far about neuroplasticity, about repetitions. How does that apply to the foot?
Yeah, it's a good question, Marianne. So thanks for bringing this up. And I think with respect to the broad concepts of repetitive task practice, constraint-like therapies, these things that actually induce positive changes in our brain and ultimately in the function, the foot mentor is exactly the same as the hand mentor, right? It relies on doing this repetitive task practice that induce these changes. Now, with respect to some of the nuances, the foot mentor is a little bit different, right? It operates in multiple dimensions, but it works the same sort of flexion and extension dimensions, where you push your foot down like you're driving a car in your gas pedal and going up, sort of releasing that gas pedal. But it also has the ability to go into what's called off-sagittal movements like supination and pronation. And that's really important for balance and stability. And so it looks like Dave has pulled up one of the foot mentors there, and he can actually kind of mimic that really quickly, where it can go down.
I'm going to try here, Dr. Nick.
Yeah. And so it can go down.
A little tricky holding it up here.
It is a little bit. You might want to stand up, Dave. Might be easier. There we go.
Let's do this.
Okay.
So
it can
I'm going to
go
have my foot in here, if you will.
Can go down into plantar flexion, and then Dave can release that and go up into what's called dorsiflexion. But he can simultaneously kind of rotate it in and rotate it out. And those are the complex movements that are required for us to maintain balance. And so that's the really important aspect. And in some of the games, actually one of the critical ways that we maintain balance is what's called an ankle strategy of motor control and balance. And so if we have the ability to learn to have that proprioception again and learn to have good motor control about the ankle, we can reduce the risk of falls. And that's super important. And we all know the consequences of a fall. They can be devastating and in some cases even life-ending. So we want to avoid those consequences. And so not only the detection, the sensitivity and the sensations from your ankle and foot are important, but also maintaining and developing muscular forces and strength and motor control about the ankle is super important, because that's what actually will help us. You can detect it, but you have to be able to respond, right? So if I'm standing maybe next to Dave and I push him just gently, he's going to have to generate a response to avoid falling over. and that's going to require the muscular forces. And so the foot mentor, just like the hand mentor, can help you regain muscular force about the arm and the hand. The foot mentor can help that with the ankle and the foot as well. So thanks for that question, Marianne. I think it's a great one and super important thing. We want to avoid falls if at all possible, just because they're really bad consequences there. And Dave is modeling that now. You can see if Dave moves down into plantar flexion.
Try to work this camera here. Absolutely. And of course, I don't have it plugged in, but you can imagine it with the foot mentors, there's same assistance where it can help you go into this upward motion and then also train you on this side to side, that off sagittal, a fancy word of saying from side to side kind of movements that's important. So important to the balance, like Dr. Nick was saying, being able to balance and make sure that we're not tilting to one side or falling. That and falls, of course, like of course, Dr. Nick mentioned, an important thing for us to try to avoid as a consequence of stroke.
So let's quickly go back over to Patrick. So Patrick, it sounds like you have completed that one activity. Let's go ahead and do thermometer here. Let's just check and see how the game is working. So I think, Patrick, I don't know, you have your audio on mute, I think. I think you're hearing me, but I'm not able to hear you. I think we'll get that audio here in a second. That's okay. We'll figure that out.
You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Patrick. Very good. Okay, so this is our thermometer game, and this looks pretty good, actually. I'm happy with this. We're not quite at the end, which means that we still have some room to improve here. That's really good. Let's go actually hit the screen. You can pause, and let's go to a next game really quickly. I want to make sure that we have good control over some of these motor control games, like these fine motor games. Because remember, one of our goals here is to try to improve your ability to grasp those the drumsticks, and that's going to really rely on some of these skills. So Patrick, go ahead and hit the skip button for me. Okay, let's see what we have next. So we should have.
This is tennis.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do this one.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So it looks like we might have some video issues there, guys. We'll get that up and running here in a second. There we go. Okay. So Patrick, how is this? Are you able to get all the way down to the bottom of the screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. And how about all the way to the top? Nice, very good.
Maybe previously I have been able to get all the way to the top.
Okay. And we'll increase this just a touch here. I'm going to make a modification here, Patrick. So just it's going to pause, but go ahead and hit the play button for me again.
Okay.
Okay. There we go. I'm liking that a little bit better. Okay. Okay, very good. So the thing I'm watching here, guys, just so you know kind of what's going on inside my head, is I want to make sure that it is hard, right? It needs to be challenging. We talked about this with Dr. Wolf on Monday, so it needs to be challenging enough so that it's going to make Patrick work for it, and such that it's enough stimuli to drive those changes in the brain. But it can't be too hard, such that it's impossible. And so that's why being able to reach those extremos is really important, like the bottom of the screen, the top of the screen. And that's what I'm checking for here.
And we talked about exactly that, that we talked about getting repetitions, but not only getting repetitions, but the quality of the repetitions being important. And a challenging repetition, one that is appropriately challenging, being kind of the highest level of the quality of repetition. And repetitions that are way too easy, or are some that are being done for you, having much less impact on that rewiring than a repetition where you're really having to work for it, but it's something that you can achieve. That's something that's just like practicing any skill, any instrument, anything you want to learn. You want to be able, you got to be challenged at your level, and not just be doing the easy bits over and over. And that's how we get better.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before on multiple rehab power hours. I mean, the hand mentor can move you, right? We've talked about this.
Yeah.
But you can't just expect to put the hand mentor on and it move you. You're right. You have to be engaged. And so that's part of the difficulty, right? You have to be engaged in thinking about doing the movements, even if you can't complete the full task. The hand mentor's going to help you do that, but you have to be part of the journey. You can't just be a passive, a passive
observer.
Passenger. Yeah.
That you really have to be trying to finish the exercise on your own. And even if you can't do it on your own completely, you trying there, that is pushing activations in your brain. That's pushing your brain to be trying to recruit new activations. I mean, there's still a lot for us to learn, but this seems to be where a lot of that science is going, where we're as we're working at it, our brain is trying to make new activations, or somehow is able to recruit other neurons around in the local area that might be able to help. Well, we do know that meaningful attempts that are challenging in nature are the types of movements and repetitions that lead to learning a new skill and learning to move your hand or your foot again.
Yep. And guys, just as we kind of come down to our last couple of minutes here, Rehab Power Hour, Rehab Power 2 hours, I want to remind you to reach out to us if you have questions or comments. Post them in the live stream here, send us an email at rehabpowerhour@motusnova.com, or give us a call at 404-594-4244 rather. Let me say that again, 404-594-4244. And just a quick reminder, our next session, I believe, is Friday at 7 p.m. And so if you guys have any sort of final questions that you would like to get answered now, do post them and we'll try our best to get them in before the session ends. If not, send us those messages or continue to post on the stream here, and we'll answer them on the next Rehab Power Hour on Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, by the way, guys, Eastern time zone. So thanks so much. Again, just a quick thank you to everyone here for being here. And Dave, any kind of final thoughts?
Well, no, I share the sentiment of thank you for everyone for joining today. We hope that you were able to learn something informative, get some question answered, as well as doing your rehab. It's great to learn and expand our knowledge base, but it's also important for us to get those repetitions in. So hopefully we were able to achieve both of those today. And then, of course, this is another announcement that we mentioned earlier in the show. We are running this contest of, please show us what you got. Show us the gains that you've made. Show us you using your hand mentor or your foot mentor, or you doing a functional task. We want to see that as well. Even if you don't have a hand mentor or foot mentor, send us a video of a recent milestone or accomplishment, lifting a bottle, opening a jar, opening the fridge, eating a sandwich, a kind of a functional task that you've been playing the drums. Yeah, let's get playing the drums here from Patrick. Send a video of you doing to us of you doing that, and it could be just something that you're getting close to finishing as well. Any kind of movement that you're proud of. Send it over to us, and then for everyone that sends us a video, they're going to be entered into a drawing for a free month you on the hand mentor or the foot mentor, and we'll work out certainly the specifics with the winner here. But we're happy to. This is kind of our way to boost the community into sharing. Sharing your gains and your milestones It's great to get that sense of accomplishment for you. It's also important for other stroke survivors to see, because we're all in this together. It's really a sense of family and community that has that keeps a lot of people going, and sharing those accomplishments and congratulating each other. That's something that we want to promote and encourage, and we know helps a lot of stroke survivors and is inspirational for a lot of people to keep going. So please do send those in, post them into the support group, and we're looking forward to seeing those.
Great.
So back to you, Dr. Nick.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dave, for that. And that's a good reminder. I think it's always good to have something to look to, and kind of a target. So it should be fun to kind of see what you guys can do. And I'm excited to see not only what you can do now, but we're going to ask for this to be done in maybe a couple weeks or a couple months, and we'll see what kind of changes are happening. So I'm personally really excited to see that. And so before we kind of finish up here, I want to go back over to Patrick real quick and make sure we have all of his questions answered. And I think I've been watching him playing his rehab here, and I think I'm liking the settings. What are your thoughts, Patrick?
Yes, yes, I like it a lot.
Very good. Yeah. So I think what we'll do, Patrick, is let's have you go ahead and use these settings for the next couple of days. And what we can do is we can have you back on the Rehab Power Hour, and we can kind of monitor that progress, and we can kind of do a continual assessment. We can kind of come back and check, see how things are going, and we'll make more adjustments as you improve.
All right. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah. So it's been a pleasure to have you on, Patrick. And I want to just quickly go through and thank everyone for being here. I want to thank Joe for being here and telling his story. 25-year stroke survivor, veteran, and we posted your book on Amazon. So we're looking forward to reading that and getting.
If I'm not mistaken, I think it's been bought out. It's sold out now from Amazon from being posted here. So we'll have to get Joe to get that restocked for everybody.
Yeah, and so that's great, and I'll be really excited to get Joe back on when he gets his hand mentor. I'm happy to have him on, and we'll do an assessment together. I also want to quickly thank Iffy rather, for being here, and for her son for being here, and for kind of walking through things and learning the process. It's such an important factor to have a support network, and such a powerful thing to happen. So great to be able to walk you guys through some of the basics of the hand mentor, and hopefully you guys can get up and running, and we'll have you back on and do a formal assessment when Iffy is ready and it kind of works for her. So I guess that's it for us. I really appreciate you guys being here with myself and David on this Wednesday afternoon. And as a quick final reminder, guys, our next Rehab Power Hour is scheduled for 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday. So we'll look forward to seeing you there. We'll have a couple more spotlight users. We'll do some more assessments, and maybe we can talk a bit more about some of the science. I was actually even thinking about talking about some of those proprioception tasks. There's some really cool videos to show what happens when proprioception goes wrong. So maybe you can let me know if you want to see those videos.
That'll be interesting.
David, final thoughts?
Yeah. No, thanks again to everyone for joining. I think we had one last question here about how to talk to somebody about maybe more information about the Motus hand or Motus foot. I know we have this in the chat, but just want to announce this as well. You can call our phone line anytime, 678-922-9511 to speak to one of our clinical specialists. And for any more information, or if you have just questions, even between Rehab Power Hour, you can always call to get someone on the line, and certainly send any emails that you might have to rehabpowerhour@motusnova.com. And we'll be sure to we read every email, and we'll be sure to address them either in a direct reply or here on the air. And make sure you get your questions answered. But that's all I've got, Dr. Nick. Back to you.
Yeah, well, excellent, guys. And I think we have reached the end of our 2-hour Rehab Power Hour today. Rehab Power 2 hours today. There we go. Thanks for sticking it out with us. This has been really fun. I think it's been good to be able to have some extra time to kind of go through some of these topics. So looking forward to our next one. And I guess from all of us here at Motus Nova, I hope you have a good rest of your day. Get more rehab between now and Friday, and we'll be there on Friday at 7 p.m. on our next Rehab Power Hour to walk you through another hour. I'm looking forward to seeing you there, and have a good one. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.